edition of Track Announcer's Notebook. Pat Gonzalez, along with my co-host and producer, Stuart Nodell. Stuart does all the preparation and all the hard work. I just come on here for an hour, do a little bit of prep, and then we talk motorcycle road racing for about an hour with some very interesting guests over the, I guess we've been doing this for almost 3 months now. And tonight's show, we're going to recap the CSBK racing that took place on the weekend at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, including a chat with Jim Brown, the crew chief, if you will, the guy who's been working so closely with Jeff Williams this year. They got off to a great start at Calabogie, but unfortunately on Thursday, Jeff was getting in some early practice time on the BMW and took a very nasty crash at turn 4 during the Riders' Choice track days. In fact, quite a few of the racers had signed up to get in some practice because it was going to be limited on the weekend to shake down the equipment over those 2 days. And we'll get an update from Jim on their season that got off to a great start at Calabogie, and an update on how Jeff is doing. We'll also have, we hope he's on board here shortly, Jordan Zoke, who won both of the Superbike races on the weekend. And we'll also have Elliot Vieira, who on his Yamaha R6 finished in the top 5 in both of those Superbike races. But before that, we're going to go to our Nodell's notes and talk about a bunch of the racing that took place at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park on the weekend, recap the results, and chat about how certain riders did. So, Stuart, I guess the big story is Jordan Zoke's quest for 14 Canadian Superbike championships took a positive step on the weekend as he won both of the Superbike races. He's now 4 for 4. Still a big question mark in terms of whether or not there will be some further rounds. We haven't got the definitive word on that. I suppose the possibilities are a return to Grand Bend Motorplex that was scheduled to host a round in June. That might be a possibility. Also a return to Calabogie. And I think the long shot in all of this is racing at Shannonville Motorsport Park. But we'll see what transpires over the next 2 to 3 weeks. If that race takes place, I believe it would be sometime in October. Otherwise, based on the 4 Superbike races and the current points, Jordan Zoke would have to be declared the 2020 Canadian Superbike champion. And Ben Young, who is out west, he left on Saturday, that Ben is going to have to hand that trophy over to Jordan. So, Stuart, taking a look at the results here, what were the key points to you with our top 5 in particular?
Well, I think it looked pretty good. The obvious 2 for me are both Samuel Guerin and Elliot Vieira. Samuel showed promise at round 1 at Calabogie. He was pretty competitive. I believe he's a first-year pro. So he's sort of an unknown to most, I would think. So he looks to be very consistent, and he may be the real deal. And obviously Elliot, who's been racing here in Canada a few years now, finishing on board a 600 in the top 5 in a Superbike event at Mosport, or CTMP, sorry. That's an awfully fast place, no matter what the circumstances are, for a 600 to run amongst the 1000cc machines.
A couple of the other riders here in the top 5 we want to talk about. Kenny Reedman, of course, came in late to ride the Trevor Daly Suzuki. Trevor, unfortunately, had to go into quarantine because he was at the Moto America race the previous weekend. And so Kenny came in here, rode that Suzuki, and I tell you, for a bike that he didn't have too many laps on, he did an outstanding job of finishing there in 3rd. And again, on Sunday, where most of the races were run, the weather conditions were a little bit iffy, and the other guy in there who finished in fourth. Michael Leon, I think, ended up with the fastest lap of the race, and went on into that second race again that was won by Jordan Zoke. Kenny turning the tables on Sam Guerin as he finishes in the second place spot. Samuel Guerin, I guess it is third. And then Elliot, who we'll have on shortly, finished in the top five again, this time one spot better. But there you can see the margin of victory between Jordan Zoke and Kenny Reedman. And we'll hopefully have Jordan on, because in that second race, Stuart, as I understand, the weather conditions were pretty iffy. They only scheduled it for 8 laps, and Jordan Zoke, after going out on his primary bike that had, I believe, slicks on it, the track conditions were such that he came on a pit road, went to the backup bike that had a rain tire on the front, a very soft Dunlop on the back, and he was able to start in pit lane right at the back of the grid and come all the way up through the field to win that race. But as you can see there, the margin of victory, just 89 one-thousandths of a second. It was that close. Another podium finish there for the talented Quebec City rider on the BMW, Garin. And then Elliot in fourth, and Ernst Bernhardt on a Yamaha, another fine Quebec rider, rounding out the top five. So we'll talk a little bit more about those superbike races a little bit later on with both Elliot and Jordan. So over to Pro Sport Bike, and this was pretty much a all Kawasaki and all Quebec affair. The Shakers, Sebastien Tremblay with the win, Christian Allard, Nicolas Meunier, and Vincent Lavalin. All of those riders putting on quite a show. And even our fifth place finisher, his dad is listening in here tonight, James Pletch. We had the pleasure of calling so many of his great races. He was very good on the production bikes. And, you know, you've been doing this stuff a long time, Stuart, where now you're announcing races and looking at kids who, you know, are, you know, the sons of guys you used to announce. But
Yeah, second generation.
Yeah, and in some cases, it's going to be a third generation. But good run there for Chris Pletch on the number 110 Honda machine. Over in, we're back to amateur superbike. They had 2 races on the weekend. And Jordan Royds, 337 out of Ancaster, Ontario on the Yamaha. And Alex Cleary on the Suzuki out of Saint-Jérôme, Quebec. They exchanged wins on the weekend. Royds winning race 1, Cleary second in race 1. And then in race 2, as we'll see, it was just the result. If you just go back for a sec, I want to acknowledge this young lady who had an incredible run. I think she was 18th in the second race, but here is a third place finish for Sarah Michelle Cotton on a Kawasaki 600. So that was quite a nice ride there to finish on the podium. And as we look at race 2 there, you can see Cleary with the win, Royds finishing second, Bergeron, Lavallee, and Pascal Bastien, who is, I think, a second or third year amateur rider. Amateur sport bike, Stuart, didn't run at Calabogie, but it was on the schedule. Brooklyn Cycle Racing, Rob Egan, of course, who's been a fixture in Canadian motorcycle road racing now, I think, for over 4 decades. Sponsoring that class. He helps out so much with the series, including taking the Dynajet dynamometer around to all of the rounds. And amateur sport bikes saw Brad McRae with the win. But as you can see there, it was a pretty close 3-rider battle with Dave Caroli and Serge Boyer, with just 1.2 seconds at the end of that race, with a Yamaha, Kawasaki, and Suzuki on the podium. Vincent Daigle in fourth, and Barry French. I think we need to check the birth certificate on Barry French. I think he might be getting the senior citizen discount at stores. So good run there for Barry French. Lightweight sport bike. These are the results of the second race. And there you can see Matthew Simpson with the win. A couple of other notables there. Jacob Black getting up to podium in third. But again, you can see just how close it was. 1.2 seconds separating the top 5 riders at the end of 8 laps of racing. And just as you rolled over there, Tony Sharpless finishing 10th. And I believe she was ninth in the first race. And there you see the results of sport bike or lightweight sport bike race number 1. I think a lot of riders sat out this one. The conditions I think were pretty horrendous, but Paul Courtois on bike number 31, the Victoriaville, Quebec rider, took the win on the Honda 500. Hervé Remetter, Kluche, and Matthew Simpson finished in fourth. But that lightweight sport bike class continues to provide some of the most incredible racing that we have seen. So our wish to our friend and a great competitor, Jeff Williams, to get well soon, Jammin' Jeff Williams. So on that note, let's bring in Jim Brown. And Jim, not the way you want to start a weekend on Thursday with Jeff's big crash in turn number 4. First of all, and most important, how is Jeff doing? And what is the latest in terms of when he might get out of, I believe he's in St. Mike's here in Toronto after being sent via helicopter to downtown Toronto?
Yeah, we had better plans for the weekend, that's for sure. Right now, he's in a lot of pain. He's got a list of broken bones that's, I've never seen anything like this altogether. He's got ribs 1 to 9 are broken and the clavicle. He's got a dislocated left knee, a couple of fractured vertebrae, and a broken femur. So as you can imagine, he's in a lot of pain. So he's stable and he's talking with the nurses and the doctors. He's remembering things. He remembers his wife and kids and stuff. He doesn't really know where he is. He doesn't remember the crash. And they're looking at, they didn't really say a timeline. They're looking at to get him a little bit more comfortable and out of pain so that they can move him. Then they'll bring him back to Kingston and put him in one of our rehab hospitals here.
Okay. Well, that is certainly good news. He really busted himself up, as you've articulated there, with that long list of injuries and broken bones. What part of the day did this happen with the crash in turn 4? Is it just at the start of the day, or was it a little bit later on after you guys had sorted some stuff out on the bike?
It was later. It was the last session, actually. They shut it down after that, but I think that was probably going to be the last session anyway, which made it about our 3rd or 4th time out. We never really got in a good rhythm, but he was getting some good times. He was getting a couple 24s flat. He liked the new pavement and said that, yeah, he could get another second or two as the weekend progressed. We were using scrubs all day long, and he came in on one on the second last session, and I looked at it and said, that tire's done. You're not going back out on that. He said, yeah, I know, but it was fun in with that typical Jeff grin, eh? So then we put another set of scrubs on. He went out and did about 2 laps, and they called a red flag, and everybody else came back in. He didn't. It's the worst scenario when you're standing waiting for your rider and you don't know who caused the red flag. But that was it. And I went to see. At that point, I go down and see John and Matt and see what's going on, and they started filling me in that it wasn't good. Okay.
Now, let's go back to Calabogie at the end of July. You guys had 2 very competitive races. Jeff was battling for the win against Jordan, and Trevor Daly was in there. I think Michael Leon was in there as well. And then towards the end of that race, Jeff dropped off the pace a little bit. Was that something to do with the motorcycle, or at 47, Jeff is maybe not in as good a shape as he was back in his heyday of Canadian Superbike racing?
Well, there's no doubt he's probably not as good a shape as he was, but he's been working hard at it, and he is in good shape now. He's got stamina now, and it was definitely part of the motorcycle in the first race. There was an oil leak, and it was blowing back on his rear tire. I can't help anybody out there. So.
All right. So you made those repairs, and then he went back out in that second race and gave Jordan Zoke everything he could handle and then some, and was closing there at the end, and it got really, really tight. And I think that may have been the big motivation, where he was really looking forward to the weekend at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. What did he tell you, and what kind of competitive frame of mind was he going into the weekend?
He was in a go-for-it mood. He was so pumped from Calabogie, and he loved the new bike. We just got the bike ready for a track day a couple of weeks before Calabogie, and then he went up and he raced it at Calabogie and just loved the new bike. He goes out in the first session at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, and he loved the new pavement. Like, he was all in the good mood. This is going to be a good weekend. And I have no doubt we will have been fighting Jordan for the wins, but this is the way it goes. But he was really upbeat. He loves that new bike.
Yeah. So where are the improvements on this new BMW? Because I did go out to the racetrack on Friday afternoon. I had a good chat with Michael Leon, and we're going to have Michael on the show next Monday night to talk about his career and his season, because he was very quick this weekend. Have the BMW guys, Michael Leon, maybe Ben Young, Jeff, have you guys been exchanging information with the new bike in terms of squeezing that little bit of extra out of the machine?
Yeah, we talk all the time. We're always talking. Everybody's probably got their little secrets, but we talk all the time. And I was talking to Michael today, and he was talking about his bike, and he crashed in turn 4 too in that last race. So, yeah, and I don't really know what it is that they like about it. I think it turns better. I think it's lighter, probably stronger, but they just seem to like that new bike. Not being a rider, I don't quite get what it is, but.
Yeah. So after things happened on Thursday, what was the rest of the weekend like for you? Did you come to Toronto? Did you have to pack up and get everything back to Kingston, or what was the rest of the weekend like for Jim Brown?
It was a blur. It was a blur. The cops got involved, and that just complicated everything and just made it an awful mess. They impounded the bike. They were just calling and asking the dumbest questions. They had absolutely no concept about racing, and I couldn't get through to them why. Why do you need this bike? Like, there's just no reason for this. And I was getting upset at them. This is 10 o'clock on Thursday night, and Pat Barnes, I heard you mention him before, he comes in and he starts calming me down. Starts talking to the cops, and got that straightened around. Yeah, I just loaded up and the next day and got out of there. The people there, the racing family, everybody was there to help, and everybody was concerned because he's a pretty popular guy.
So
that was it. It was.
And what were some of the? I assume when you say the police, you're talking about Durham Region. What kind of questions were they asking, and did they ever get a hold of the bike, or is it back with you?
No, they've got it now, and they won't release it. I can't even get my hands on it. They brought it to me after they picked it up and threw it on a flatbed truck on its side, laden down strapped, and they got back to my pit, and I was upset about the way they were handling the bike. They wanted me to get the data off the bike, but it was too badly torn up to do that. So then they just put it back up on the truck and hauled it away. And they called me the next day, and the guy says, "I'm doing the safety on the bike." I'm like, I don't understand what a safety is on a crashed up race bike. But he said, well, it doesn't seem to have any front brakes. And I said, well, because the right handlebar is broken off and the master cylinder is gone. He said, oh, did it have brakes when it went out? Like, just some of the dumbest questions. And I don't know what they were investigating it for. It was a typical racing crash. The bike's not even really that bad. A set of body works, some handlebars, and exhaust system. It's good to go. So, yeah, that was it. It felt pretty funny to be driving away there in the truck without my rider and without my bike, though.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. Maybe Stuart and I'll try to reach out to Durham Regional Police between now and next Monday's show and try to figure out whether or not that's standard protocol and procedure. So Jim, obviously, Jeff is not 30 something. He's at the tail end of his career. Do you think that after all of this that he's gonna finally retire? Because I know he'd retired for a while to look after his business and his family, and then decided to come back. But surprisingly, he wasn't any slower really than he was when he left the sport.
No, it's funny when we get convincing with each other. He blames me for getting him back in it because I made him come out ice racing with us once, and I blame him for getting me back in it because I had retired. And I don't really know. I think I've got two ideas. One is that he'll want to get back on Tame the Beast, and the second is he's been talking about going to four wheels. He's been talking about racing cars, so this might make the decision right there. I really couldn't answer that question.
That's interesting because on the weekend I was not at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. I was actually down at Shannonville announcing the car races down there, and Mike McNeil, I'm not sure if Mike's listening in, but Mike McNeil, former amateur and pro superbike rider. Mike is racing Formula 4 cars. Didn't have a great weekend. He was fast. He ran up front, but mechanical problems put him out of both of his Formula 4 races, and then one of the other races, because we had quite a downpour there on Sunday morning. The conditions were so wet that he decided to sit out race number 2. So if Jeff decides to go car racing when he's all healthy again, then we'll introduce him to Mike McNeil, because I think Mike's been racing cars now for about 7 or 8 years after his motorcycle road racing career. Stuart, we'll let you've probably got some questions that I haven't asked of Jim Brown as you've been listening here over the last 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, well, I guess really, Pat, it's kind of along the same line of thinking as you, is what Jeff might do in the future. And I've known him a long time, and Jeff, I think he boat raced for a period of time when he left motorcycle racing. So not really surprised that he'd want to pursue car racing and go on four wheels. But yeah, he's a racer at heart and certainly passionate about it. But more importantly, hopefully, he has a healthy recovery, full recovery. And it sounds like, based on what Jim said, it'll be maybe a longer road, but looks like he is going to have a full recovery.
Yeah, that is the good news, that each day he seemed to be getting a little bit better, and the prognosis is very, very good. Jim Brown, what do you do now for the rest of the season? Is getting that bike back in shape next on your list?
Yeah, as soon as I can get my hands back on it, I'm going to start tinkering away and getting it straightened up. I don't know, when Jeff comes out of this and he's mobile again but not ready to race, he might even want to put somebody else on it if we get any more rounds. So as soon as I get it back, I'll start to fix it up. And
did Durham Police give you any indication as to when they would release the bike?
Not really, but Jeremy Sherrard is closer up there, and he's looking into it, and he's got a friend there or something, so he's going to try to keep in touch with him and find out when we might be able to get it back.
And Jim, if any of the folks listening in tonight want to send their best wishes to Jeff for a speedy recovery, what's the best way to do that? Have you got an email or where we can send a text message, etc.?
Well, he doesn't have his phone. I gave his phone back to his wife, Sherry, yesterday. I suspect once he gets a little bit better, he'll have his phone and be able to FaceTime with her. She hasn't been able to even get in the room with him because of COVID. Sherry's on Facebook. If they want to hook up with Sherry on Facebook, it might be the best way. Sherry Williams.
Okay. Well, on behalf of everyone, myself, Stuart, and everyone who's on board here tonight for Track Announcers Notebook, please extend our well wishes, and we hope to see Jeff back at a racetrack sometime soon. And I know earlier in the year you've been on just about every one of the shows. Jeff was planning on maybe going to Daytona for the 200, and if obviously that's not going to happen now. I'm not sure if any of the Canadian riders are going to be able to get down there. But I did save an official Daytona International Speedway shirt for Jeff. So when we meet up with him, we'll get that off to him. Even if he can't go to Daytona for the 200, he can have the shirt. Jim, thanks for coming on board. Any final thoughts before we move on and chat with some racers who were able to run this weekend?
No, I don't think so, but thank everybody for their good wishes. And as we know, he's a tough guy, so I think he'll be okay.
Okay. Jim Brown, thank you very much. And do extend our best wishes to Jeff and Sherry and the entire family.
Okay, thanks, Pat.
Jim Brown with an update on Jeff Williams, who unfortunately had a big crash on Thursday at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park in Turn 4. As you heard, he really banged himself up, but he is on the road to recovery. It's going to be a long one, and we hope to see him at the racetrack, maybe not racing, but back at the racetrack next year. Stuart Nodell, we ran through all of those results from the weekend with the Canadian Superbike Championship. We've got Wayne, I want to say Wayne Vieira, but this is Wayne's son, Elliot. I called some of Wayne's races in Guyana many, many years ago. So Elliot comes by his racing prowess very honestly. I don't know who was the better racer. Maybe we'll ask Clive Nikikin that, whether it was Wayne or whether it was Elliot. But Elliot, first of all, congratulations on the 2 top 5 finishes, riding a 600 in the Superbike race on the weekend.
Thank you very much.
How difficult were the conditions? I know you did not run in the pro sport bike race because you were on slicks. You didn't have rain tires mounted and elected to sit that race out and not start. But then Clive and the crew got the rain tires on there, and you had those 2 brilliant rides in Superbike. Give us the Coles Notes version of your weekend.
Sure thing. Well, firstly in the morning, we were having some issues with the front end. It was shattering a lot. That's outcome from yesterday, from the Saturday qualifying. So we sorted that out. Continuing to today, so for the first race, the Liquid Moly race, we were looking at the weather and it was very, very iffy. We weren't sure whether to go slicks or rain. So when they finally announced that they were going to give us a 5-minute track time, I went out for the 5 minutes. The track seemed like it wasn't wet enough for the rain, so we decided to stick on with the slicks. And looking up at the sky, we were pretty confident. But sadly, in Womp Lap, about corner 5, it started to come down, and going down the back straight, my bike started to hydroplane. So I was like, it's definitely not the best race for slicks. So I came in right away, and then I also heard that Wilhelm Lohan, who was running a rain front in a slick back, fell. So that was pretty bad. Luckily, he didn't get hurt, because that was a pretty fast corner. Then for the Superbike, we actually we did switch to reins, but then afterwards, looking up, we did switch back to the slicks for the first race and for the second race. For the first race, in the first, let's say the first 5 laps, it was still a little damp and you really couldn't push. So the guys with the rain tires pretty much, you know, left us in the dust. But as the race progressed, we started to get better times and started to catch up. So it was pretty good. I enjoyed myself a lot. You know, I had a little race with Michael Leon later down in the race, but in the end, you know, he just pulled away from me and got the best lap time for the day.
And then, were you with Michael when he fell in the second race at turn 4? Were you close enough to him?
I was not close enough. I was exiting corner 3 when he crashed. So I did see, well, when the red flag came out and when the rain started to come down really heavy, especially it was pouring down at 5. We were going through 5 and I did see his bike and he was down. So I was a little worried. And then when we stopped on the straight by one of the Marshall stations, they did tell us that he got up. So that was good.
Yeah. Now, I spoke to Michael, and as we said, we're going to have Michael on the show. Had a good chat with him Friday in the pits talking about the new BMW. And as you said, he had the fastest lap in both of those races. I think qualified second right behind Jordan, just a fraction of a second away from the pole. When you came into that corner, was it already wet? Because that's the report that I get, that Michael went down because it had just started to rain in corner number 4. He hit the rain first, and that's when he crashed out there in that left-hander.
Yeah, that is right. It just came down. Like it was no warning, especially in corner 4. The line in corner 4 has actually changed from previous layers, as everyone was saying. So usually we're tending to go more on the outside of the track. And I don't know if by any chance he hit one of the bumps and that could upset the bike. But it was when the rain came down, the track got really slippery in the end. So if you were on slicks, you're definitely getting a good slide there.
Yeah. Elliot, you've run there before. Compare the racetrack and the repaving in various sections of the track that's been done. Which portions of the racetrack are much better, much improved, and maybe what are others that are about the same, and maybe a couple of corners where whatever they've done, you're not as happy with?
Well, I can straight up say from 8, 9, and 10, where they repaved, it's like a billiard table there. Like by far, you can gain like a second from the previous track in that corners. 5 is also very well done, and as well as corner 2. One corner I would have kind of a complaint about would be 1. 1 is very bumpy, and if you enter it a little too tight in the corner, your bike would tend to be very like you're like on a scrubbing board.
And then what about corner 4? That was the scene of, I guess, both Jeff Williams and Michael Leon's crashes.
Yes, corner 4 for me, from prior to last year, my line was into corner 4 has pretty much been the same. I've always go there a bit wide, and then coming into 5, I go to inside. So my line hasn't changed there, but a lot of guys said that they were very tight into corner 4 in the years before. So it hasn't affected me, but it has affected a lot of riders, I could say.
So, Elliot, let's go back earlier in the year. I want to talk about the big difference between what you're doing on the racetrack this year compared to last year, where, frankly, you guys struggled with a lot of equipment issues. So what's been the big change from last year to this year, where you're running up front, you're on the pace, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what you've been doing out at Grand Bend Motorplex with the Soar Series, because you've got another round coming up at the end of the month.
Sure. Like really the only thing that's changed is just that we were unfortunate to get bad parts, or we had a bad crankshaft from last year, and it just destroyed bearings. And that was because we've been building engines right after every race. We didn't have time to test and set up, and it's just been, every year has been the same thing over and over. So at the end of the year, we just stopped. We started off with a clean slate. We rebuilt the engine at Guard Bush, and this year it's been paying off really well. We cannot complain at all.
So you're taking two R6s to the racetrack. Are these the same bikes you had last year, or did you guys keep one of last year's bikes and added a new motorcycle for 2020?
Yes, we are. Right now we've been running the old bike, which is actually supposed to be our B bike, but it ended up being our A bike because we bought a bike over from Motor America, and because COVID started, and so we didn't have much time to do any testing on it. And that weekend at Calabogie, I wanted to run the race on Saturday, and also I wanted to drive up to Soar and run the race in Grand Bend, which we did. But we played our cards a little bad, as in believing that our A bike, the new bike, would have been quick enough, or the engine be quick enough for the race, and turns out that wasn't the case. But we still, at the end, Sunday, we still went to the track and rode from last to second. So it wasn't a complete, disaster of a weekend. But I did get a lot of track time. I did learn a lot from Calabogie. And I would say it's a really beautiful track. Not a spectator track, but a really beautiful one for riders.
So you ran Calabogie on the Saturday. Who did the driving from Calabogie to Grand Bend? That's a bit of a jaunt.
Well, yeah. So, initially, Clive started out driving, so we had to drive all the way back home, and then we just loaded up the B-bike in the back of the vehicle, and we drove right up to London. So I did the driving to London. We overnighted London, and then ended up just going in the morning to Grand Bend and race.
And you started because you hadn't qualified. They put you in the back row of the grid. You came all the way up through to grab second. Where are you sitting after 3 rounds in the Soar Series and Pro Sport Bike there? I believe you are the leader, but what kind of a points lead have you got?
I'm not too sure, actually. I haven't really been paying attention to the points, but going on to the 4th round, I will be looking up on that.
All right. Can you put Clive on for a minute? I want to see maybe Clive's got that data, and I want him to talk a little bit about his rider. Clive, first of all, welcome to Track Announcer's Notebook. We had to get the Guyanese content on this show up, and we're doing that tonight, having yourself and Elliot. And of course, I had the honor of being born in that South American country and went to my first racetrack, the old South Dakota circuit that a few of the Canadian riders, including Michael Taylor and the late Owen Weichel, raced on. But Clive, first of all, give us your take on the weekend, not just what Elliot did, but the whole running of the race, because it's easy to criticize, but a tip of the announcer's cap to both Colin Fraser and Sandy Noche and everybody else who was really pulled together to pull off the events at Calabogie and at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, and hopefully at least one other event before things wrap up.
Thanks, Pat, for having me. First, I'd like to say, Sandy and Colin, along, I guess, with Rob Egan, with Brooklyn Cycles, who put up their fence, they did really put a lot of time and effort into trying to make this happen. As you know, it was very undecided if or not there would be a national run from CSBK. But I guess Sandy convinced Colin that he would share his track days with him to make this event happen. And with the late notice, rider turnout was pretty good, and the events, ran off very well. with all the problems we had due to COVID, not being able to carry a full crew, not being able to have spectators, and not being able to get a lot of time into tests. But overall, I would say it has been very successful with the limited resources and the time they had to put this together.
Clive, give us your rundown on the specific races. Let's talk about the Superbike races on the weekend. What were your impressions of Jordan's 2 win? We were hoping to have Jordan on the show, but I know he was tied up with some other stuff. We'll hopefully get him on next Monday night along with Michael Leon. So Clive, Superbike race number 1, first of all. Conditions on and off rain, I guess, for a good portion of the day. How did that all play out in Superbike race number 1?
Well, this time, unlike the 600 race, we sort of predicted the weather a little better, and because it was dry going up to the warm-up lap into the 600 event, and then it poured. But on the Superbike event, the track was starting to dry. So riding Mosport before and knowing the conditions, Mosport is a track that dries out very fast. And that's why we choose to go on the slicks. And I noticed a few of the riders who decided to go with full rain, such as Kenny Reedman, who was, out in the rain. I even think the first race, the Shaker, was on rain tires. And Jordan himself went out on rains, and then he was smart enough to realize that the conditions would not be good enough for rains. And I guess he pulled in, and they were able to switch to put on the rain tire on the front, or it was probably on the front before, but they ended up just using a soft slick at the rear. And he started at the pit lane, which is a handicap, as you know. But he rode a fantastic race. And I just had a little email there with Steve Crevier. And he says, how can you ride a fantastic race starting from the pits? I says, well, what I meant is Jordan was able to ride a fantastic race coming from last, starting from the pits, to overcome that deficit to win. And he was able to do that because Kenny was on rain tires. And, the rain tires are good for the first half of the race. And then the second half, that's when, Jordan was able to ride. And he rode hard and he rode well in order to win that race.
We're going to go to Stuart Nodell. Stuart, any questions or comments coming in on our Q&A button for Clive or for Elliot?
No, Pat, you guys are basically carrying the conversation. No problem. We're all sitting back listening, and just keep continuing.
So Clive, Elliot talked a little bit about the changes in equipment from last year to this year, and how you guys have improved your results immensely, as indicated on the weekend with the 2 top 5 finishes in Superbike with a 4th and a 5th. What is the plan now, for the rest of this season in terms of the SOAR series? I assume you're going after that championship. But I also want to touch on a story that developed at the opening round of the Super Series with that race where Elliot was leading and then it was red flag, but the win was still given to Elliot. I know there was a lot of controversy following that. Are you running the Super Series, or are you going to focus on the SOAR championship in Pro Sport Bike?
No, we're going to focus on the SOAR series. And one of the reasons is that the Super Series don't see it necessary to pay out prize money to the pros. And they don't realize, or they do realize, the amount of money it costs just to run a weekend. Because you need tires. Tires alone could run you up to $1,000. You need race gas. You got to get up there. You got to find hotels and stuff. So to ride for a trophy, those days is for the amateurs. I mean, there is racing. It's for fun, but then when you put a lot of effort and time and money behind a sport, you expect to be rewarded somehow. I mean, it's so even SOAR pays out prize money for the pros. So even though the prize money wouldn't get you anything, it still helps with the cost.
Well,
So that's the
indeed.
big difference.
Yeah, indeed. Every little bit helps, even if it, as you said, it covers a set or two of tires. And we've talked about how Sandy Noche and Colin Fraser have done a great job pushing ahead with a national superbike series. But again, we're all walking down this road dealing with COVID-19 for the first time. But Ken McAdam has done a great job as well in getting that series up and running, establishing the protocols and the procedures. And, they've got race number 4 coming up on the 29th and 30th. And if I get a chance, I'm going to try to get down there to catch some of the race action at Grand Bend Motorplex at the end of August. And then they've got their final 2 rounds, one in September, one in October. Clive, once you finish the SOAR Championship, any plans for Elliot to go back to Guyana for their annual big race meeting in November? Or, it doesn't look as though any of our Canadian riders are going to be able to run in the U.S. the way they just extended the closure of the border for another month.
I don't think it will be possible because right now, as you know, Guyana is next to Brazil, and apparently a lot of the Brazilians are sneaking over the border trying to get into Guyana, and in doing so, they're bringing that COVID-19 with them. So Guyana at the moment, it's very iffy about how they're going to control this pandemic there. So I can't see, making a trip anywhere outside the country this year.
So, Clive, based on the experience on the weekend running in Superbike, any thoughts or discussions, even preliminary, that after this season, Elliot would look at maybe moving up to a Superbike for 2021?
We will tend to explore that possibility. But of course, the manufacturers here are so tight with their support. And, what is ironic is that some of the manufacturers is holding back the support. I don't know why. Because this year has been a booming year for the RV, the motorcycle, the boating industry. Most of the bikes are sold out, the ATVs are sold out, the boats are sold out, recreational vehicles are sold out, and yet they're using this pandemic as an excuse not to do anything.
Yeah, no, I've heard that with off-road motorcycles, ATVs. Sales have been incredible. Maybe not so much with the street motorcycles, but I think when it's all said and done, considering what some of the other industries like the travel industry and the music industry has been dealing with, the power sport industry is going to come out of this okay. Again, if you'd like to send us a question or a comment, you can do that by clicking on the Q&A button and just typing in your question or comment, or if there's a racer you would like to see on an upcoming edition of Track Announcer's Notebook, pass that information along as well. Stuart Nodell, anything else in terms of questions, comments before we move on here with Clive? I'm going to get back to Elliot in a moment as well.
Yeah, actually, Pat, just a couple of things. I guess, I also know Clive from a long time ago. Him and his family certainly supported my racing. And I was one of the fortunate Canadians that did get to go to Guyana to race. So my thought is maybe they could just have the race just now, as I was always told when you're in Guyana, which means any time between now and whenever they can hold the race when it's safe to do so. So just thought I'd throw that in there. But no, I think Clive's doing a great job with Elliot. Obviously, Clive has a lot of experience, and he knows how to coach his rider. And it's great to see them. It's great to see people like Clive give back to the sport after so many great years as a rider. So it's really good to see.
Well, indeed. Clive, let's put your rider back on. We want to wrap things up here with Elliot, and you're doing a great job.
Well, Pat, before I sign off, I just want to say thanks to the people who is making this possible. Snow City Cycling, Brooklyn Cycles, Wasp Performance, Bickle Racing, Christian Kitchens, K&J Auto Body, because we had a few crashes. They were able to help us. And, you know, all the people who did a fantastic job, especially Gord Bush, who did a really good job for us, giving us a good engine, a reliable and fast engine as well. So, you know, thanks to these people, Road Sport Auto Group for transportation, we were able to make this happen. So again, without your support, you know, we would not be ahead of the game.
Well, Clive, congratulations on the weekend, and continue to support you know, a very talented rider. Elliot, before we wrap things up, what did you get out of the weekend that you might be able to take to the SOAR event coming up at Grand Bend Motorplex? I know you've got a number of other top riders who've been running that series, sort of Grand Bend specialists. So if you're going to win that championship, you're going to earn it. But running as well as you did on the weekend, that's got to boost your confidence going into the fourth round of the SOAR Championship on the 29th and 30th.
That's for sure. Like from last year, just that blowing up all those motors, and so it really takes a lot out of me, especially it would take a lot out of anyone, you know. So just this year, being able to win and compete and even finish a race per se, it's definitely been a confidence booster for me. So I just hope it continues. Well, the bike's been amazing, and I've been slowly working on my racecraft. So, you know, by next year, hopefully, you know, we have a good setup and everything. And hopefully by, you know, next year, COVID is eased up or a vaccine or something comes out so we can have some really good racing.
Elliot, we talked about that opening round of the Super Series where you had a huge lead, 15 or 16 seconds in Pro Sport Bike, and then the arm pump developed. You ended up crashing, bringing out the red flag, and they still awarded you the win. How were you how surprised were you when that happened?
I was very surprised. Like, from that crash, I left the track immediately, and when I got home, I got called, and they were telling me, you won. And I was like, no, I crashed. And they were like, no, you won. And I was like, no, I crashed. And I just couldn't believe it. You know, I'm just going to say straight out that, you know, if I crashed, I didn't deserve that win.
Have you had a conversation with Louis Rafa? Because I know Louis was very, very upset. He was scored second and wasn't given the win.
Yes, I actually did. Louis, I saw what Louis posted up on and I messaged him, and I was just telling him I agree with him. Like, I shouldn't have been awarded that race, but, you know, that's what happened. And
so are you going to give Louis the check? Or
yeah, for sure.
Maybe there wasn't a check.
If I say him, yes, but I haven't been, like, as I said, I left the track. I didn't collect anything, so I haven't been there. So if I do end up back there, for sure.
And so what is the plan this weekend? I don't believe there are any road racing events going on. How do you prepare for the fourth round of the Sword Championship a week from this weekend in terms of training, preparing the bike, or maybe doing some other motorcycle riding?
Well, well, firstly, because we're coming from Mosport, I'm just going to try to set up the bike back for Grand Bend. Being a smaller track, you have to change sprockets, and so I'm just going to go over the bike as well, change oil, because, you know, Mosport, as we know, it really takes a lot out of a bike, especially down that straight. And, you know, I kind of, you know, I have to tank liquid moly for the oil. Like, without them, you know, oil is like $100 a bottle. So without their support, you know, it would be taking a lot out of our pockets. So every little bit, as you said, every little bit helps. So I'm just trying to get the bike ready, and I'm also going to do some cycling, you know. And I've been working on my hand pump. So I've been having therapy. But actually my hands are much better. Like at Mosport, I was pretty much good to ride the whole race without any hand pump.
I know your dad's been your biggest fan, and as we said, we watched him ride in Guyana when we had a chance to go down there and call some of those races. What has he been able to contribute to the racing effort this year, other than obviously the financial end of it?
He calls Clive every day. He says, "Is everything okay? Son safe? Is my son ready?" Oh yeah, he's been behind him all day.
Okay, so
I don't even get the calls.
All right, so I understand your dad's job is to keep Clive in order.
Yes, basically.
That's a big job.
Yeah, he's been calling like after the race, before the race. He's on Clive's ass, basically.
All right. Somebody's got to do it. It's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it.
Yeah.
Elliot, we asked Clive earlier, I'm sure you were listening in, about future plans to maybe move up to Superbike. It's sort of neat to be up there running with those 1000s, even though you're on a 600. Would you personally like to move up to Superbike next year?
I wouldn't say next year, but I wouldn't mind riding one. Like I won't mind actually doing a regional or something on a 1000 next year. But for national, I just want to focus on the 600 because I'm trying my, you know, after the years, you know, we've been taking a lot. So I just want to see if I can wrap up a national title 600 before I go up. But for sure, I would love to have a ride on 1000.
Yeah, and earlier you were talking about the start of the pro sport bike race at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, where Will Hornblower went down on the warm up lap. Did you have a chance to chat with him after that? And you know, is he doing okay? And what are his plans? Could you be racing against him at Grand Bend at the end of the month?
It's possible. I did have a chance to talk with him. Thankfully he said, as he said, he just had a low slide and he's pretty much good. He didn't, and he said, in fact, he actually was saying he enjoyed the race from that corner because he fell down at 8th. So, but he might have a chance of racing with him. Not sure if he's going to come out. He's been very busy this year, as he said, between work and he recently bought a house. So he's been working on that.
Yeah, he is a chip off the old block. I had the pleasure of announcing his dad, Bill Hornblower's races when he was racing 250 Grand Prix bikes. I'm not sure if he raced against Clive or not, but his dad was a great racer, and Will is an outstanding rider. He didn't run Calabogie, so he didn't have a shot at the championship, but unfortunately, after he qualified on the pole, he had that mishap in the warm-up lap when the skies opened there.
Yeah, and Clive did say he against was bad.
He did race against Bill Hornblower?
Yes, he did race against Bill Hornblower.
Okay. Bill, I was probably after Bill's best before date had long passed, but that's for another story. In fact, Stuart and I have been talking about ideas for different shows. We're going to get a bunch of the 250 Grand Prix riders from the heyday of that class here in Canada back in the 70s and 80s, and get them on the show to talk 250 Grand Prix racing. So, Stuart, we're going to go to you one final time to wrap. Do we have any further comments or questions? I saw a couple of notes there wishing Jeff Williams a speedy recovery and wishing him well.
Yeah, just mostly speedy recovery, well wishes for Jeff. There's been a lot of that. I guess the only other thing would be if Clive is teaching Elliot the patented Clive dive.
I haven't.
He actually has. He has been teaching me the Clive to dive.
I think that is a registered trademark in motorcycle road racing. So on that note, I'd like to thank Jim Brown, along with Clive Niggakeen and Elliot Vieira for coming on the show. Next Monday night, we're hoping to have both Michael Leon and Jordan Zoke to do part 2 of the CSBK National. And maybe as early as next Monday, we'll have news about a potential third event for the Canadian Superbike Championship. So until next Monday night, for my co-host Stuart Nodell, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. Spread the word. And again, Stuart will be posting this show on our YouTube channel under Track Announcer's Notebook. Have a good week, and we'll see you back here next Monday night on Track Announcer's Notebook. Be well.